Hello everybody, welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Laura Ann Moore and I post videos all about money, mindset and motivation to help you feel better about money and live your best lives. Today is a little bit of a different video. It's not like one of my usual videos, but I felt that it was important for me to record and post. Very recently, I posted a video on my Instagram about the investing gender gap.
Hold on a second. Somebody here did it, just say it now. Who did it? Who did it? Who did it? Just open up your mouth. It's out there. I don't care. Appreciate the person who did it. Who did it?
And someone posted a comment which ironically plays into the problem. This comment basically said, "It is in a woman's nature to spend more on unnecessary purchases. I saw a stat that said 80% of consumer spending is dictated by women. I think men just perhaps buy less things and have more money to invest. There is a cultural element to it as well." Now at first, I was like, then I was like, no, it's not his direct fault that this is how he thinks. He is a product of a patriarchal society. So the best thing that I can do is educate. And that is why I am going to keep the comment anonymous, because it's not a witch hunt, it's an educational video. For me, I feel like this comment highlights how society views female spending and how the patriarchy has pushed this narrative that women are the problem and not the society or the system in which we have to live in. And it perpetuates this idea that we're the ones at fault instead of it being a deep-rooted systemic issue. Now in this video I am going to attempt to explain the reasons why the investing gender gap is real and exists, and also why I think that men don't just have more to invest because they spend less than women. So point number one, I want to look at the first part that says it is in a woman's nature to spend more. First of all, this claim feels misogynistic and is a distorted view on what reality is. Now, one thing for us to think about is we live in a society where there are a few strong systems of oppression at play. Class, race, gender, and a lot of the time they cross over, but in some way, all of us are affected by it. And there's this quote from cordraid.org that I just love. And it says, "We all suffer from these oppressive systems of injustice in our own ways, but because they feed on differences and vulnerabilities, not all humans suffer equally." Now this is true, and even though the word patriarchy means a system of society or government in which men hold the power and women are largely excluded from it. So even though men profit from this in so many ways, it's not to say that some men don't suffer as a result from it. For example, like the ways in which society view crying as weak and pathetic if a man does it. And it has bred this culture of toxic masculinity, but that's made it hard for men to show emotion. So obviously they're affected negatively by it. But we also have to acknowledge that men still largely benefit from the system that we live in. Now, in patriarchal societies like ours, for literally centuries, men have been spreading the word that women are inferior to men, and they claim it is by nature. Now, there are differences between men and women, but we have to question whether it's nature or whether it's nurture, which is a classic philosophical question, but has to be applied to this as well. The reason why women have been portrayed as less than in society is partly due to the fact that some people love to keep their power, and what's the best way to do that? You make up some convenient ways of thinking that keep the divide, which in this case is in genders, but it's all socially constructed and it's continually, I guess, sustained. And that's been the case for so many years, and we are fed these theories on literally a daily basis, so much that it has seeped into our language and our everyday thinking, as you can see with the comment that is in question. Now, because I cannot find anywhere on the internet any genuine statistics to show that on a biological level women differ from men specifically in their approach to spending money, I feel like we can just chuck that idea in the bin altogether. Bye. Now the second part, it's in a woman's nature to spend more on unnecessary purchases. Purchases are subjective. We literally cannot label or categorise someone's spending as necessary or unnecessary. Now, yes, we need to do that in our own terms for our budgeting in regards to what are my needs, what are my wants, but it's not for somebody else to tell you or judge what is unnecessary. Because what is unnecessary for one person is something very valuable for someone else. You know, it's the whole one man's treasure is another man's trash. And we all have different goals, different values, and it's why personal finance is so personal. And we just shouldn't judge people on how they choose to spend their own money. Now, in America, there's this guy, his name is Dave Ramsey. He thinks he's a financial guru, but he's the absolute antithesis to a feminist. And one thing he does online and in his financial content is he's constantly commenting and judging on how people spend their money. And it's infuriating because if somebody that well known is doing it, it makes people think that they can all do it to each other. Luckily, there's an entire social movement against him because one time he said, if you are in debt, the only time you should see the inside of a restaurant is if you're working in one. Spending is not black and white. It is a big old bunch of grey. In addition to that, money is emotional. Both women and men make decisions on money based on emotions and how they're feeling in the moment. Did a report with Claro Money back in 2020, maybe 2021, that shows that your mental health has a huge impact on your ability to manage money. So if you feel stressed, overwhelmed, depressed, any kind of negative feelings, it's actually proven that you're more likely to struggle with managing your money, which obviously means that you're less likely to make sensible choices with your money. And that is definitely a reason that someone could potentially end up spending money on unnecessary purchases. And that will happen regardless of your gender. You can literally have all the practical tools in the world, but if the emotional side, which affects our behaviour, isn't sorted, it's going to affect how you handle your money. And as a money and mindset coach, first of all, I'm fascinated by financial psychology and the reason why we spend the way we do, manage our money the way we do. But I always say that mindset is the foundation for your financial health. So back to the point, even if we as women were spending money on unnecessary purchases, maybe it's actually due to the fact that we have faced financial and social inequality for literally centuries, which makes you feel a bit shit. And then maybe spending money has been the sort of unconscious antidote to that. Just a thought. Now on to the next bit. I saw a stat that said 80% of consumer spending is dictated by women. Whether it's true or not, we probably actually need to acknowledge that a high percentage of female consumer spending isn't the cause of the problem, but instead it's actually the consequence of the problem, and the problem being financial inequality of women. And we need to look further beyond this percentage itself and ask, the world, if women's spending is at 80%, then what is the reason for it?
What was the reason? What was the reason?
Let's just say the stats are that high. We probably need to take into account that women on a daily spend more time than men making economic decisions for their family. So the burden of financial responsibilities falls onto the woman, and therefore statistically it's going to look like we spend more. But in addition to that, so many statistics and studies show that frivolous spending actually has nothing to do with gender. And yet for some reason, this kind of myth of being the frivolous female spender, it won't leave us alone. So first up, let's have a look at gendered language. The language around money is so unbelievably different when it is aimed to women versus when it's aimed at men. Anne Biden, who is an absolute powerhouse in the industry, she's the CEO and founder of Starling Bank. She commissioned a study on the gendered language around money and found that 65% of financial articles in women's magazines, women are categorised as excessive spenders. And of those aimed at men, 70% is emphasised on making money. There's this huge difference in the approach towards money. And I just feel like for men, money is made to represent power and luxury and status and all of that. And yet for women, we're talked about restriction and cutting back so that we can splurge on shopping sprees. And let's be honest, when you think of the phrase retail therapy, when is that ever used in conjunction with a man? Now, I feel like it kind of plays into this misogynistic idea of the way that anything viewed as feminine is weak and pointless and childish versus anything that's viewed as masculine is cool and pined after. So this happens with hobbies a lot. Men are obsessed with football. It's a lifestyle. It's not just a game. It's all cool and manly. But with women, when you look at a hobby that might be for a woman, like scrapbooking or beauty, it's belittled. Language can have such a huge impact on someone's life. I literally talk about this all the time on my Instagram, in my sessions. Your language affects your behaviours, which affects and creates your belief systems, and that is what makes up your entire life. And what happens is people internalise what they hear and what they read. So young girls read in magazines, women on Instagram, and what ends up happening is you become a self-fulfilling prophecy. So if you keep seeing messages about spending money, what do you think is going to happen? You're going to end up spending your money. Now, if we look at it on a timeline, women have only been able to open their own bank account since 1975. That is literally less than 50 years ago. It's not a long time in the grand scheme of the entire human civilization. So naturally what's happened is money hasn't been for women until recently. So the language, it's all been marketed towards men. But now things have changed. Women are allowed to do all the things that men can do, you know, get mortgages, have bank accounts, get paychecks, but yet we're still left out of the conversation. So we still have a really long way to catch up to be included in the conversation and to be even paid the same amount. Let's talk a little bit about the cost of beauty standards. One thing that women have to do is uphold society's beauty standards and norms, right? We get marketed to with beauty products, hair, nails, clothes. We're constantly told that to be viewed in an acceptable way in society, we need those things. We're constantly being told there's problems to fix. Your hairy body, your cellulite, you're fat, your hair's not silky enough, your eyelashes aren't long enough. Like, the list literally goes on. Now, I'm not saying this stuff doesn't happen with men and the view that men have to be masculine and manly, you know, all of that. But for women, it's a real problem. So in a report from Fidelity on women and money, it showed that men spend 2 times more than women on investments and women spend 2 times more than men on luxury goods and beauty. And I think this is because the media constantly reinforces the idea that a woman's best capital is the way that she looks, right? Which sends out this message that we as women should spend our money to improve how we looked and how we're viewed. And that if we work on our aesthetic, we're making a good investment. But let's be real, right? Let's compare the return on investment on the investment that a man would make that's cash in the stock market versus the investment that a woman would make on her appearance. I just do not think this is tangibly comparable. I'm sure that a lot of you are going to look at this and be like, why don't you just not wear makeup? Why don't you just come as you are? You know, that's your choice. Now, it is our choice, but it also kind of isn't. It's our choice to wake up and physically put it on, but unfortunately, like, it's a bit of a double bind because stats, like, if we go against the grain and we rebel and we don't do these things and we don't play into the beauty norms, statistics actually show, ironically, that this would have an impact on our careers, because people in businesses have literally said that they would be less likely to hire a woman who doesn't wear makeup, therefore perpetuating the gender gap, because women are then obviously less likely to be able to climb the career ladder and be chosen for higher paying roles. Now, on top of all of that, women are at a disadvantage because when it comes to spending money, we have the pink tax. Now, for those of you who don't know, the pink tax is basically like this extra bit of money that we pay for everyday products like shampoo and conditioner and razors. So it literally costs us more money as a female to buy the same products as a man. And this happens throughout the entire course of our lives. So it's literally more expensive to be a woman. And on to the last point, I think men just perhaps buy less things and have more money to invest. Now, what we need to understand is that men don't have more money than women as a result of not spending as much. Instead, they have more money in the first place due to the gender pay gap. So this means literally from the get-go, men are already ahead of women when it comes to the amount of income or money to play with that they have, because stats show that a woman makes 83p for every £1 that a man makes. And I found a report that said in every country, pretty much men earn more than women. So it was a study of 45 countries across the world, and researchers literally couldn't find one country where women earned more than men. And then when we look at the intersectionality of race and gender, black women lose out the most. So there was a report from LSE that highlights that black women are the least likely to be among the UK's top earners compared to any other racial or gender group. That was in the UK. And then in the US, which was a study by the National Women's Law Centre, they found that black women are typically paid only 63 cents to every 79 cent that a white woman earns to every dollar that a white man earns. So it's a massive gap. So when we apply all of that information to investing, of course the gender gap in investing is completely understandable. And even though reports have actually shown that women make better investors due to our ability to proceed with caution and not make as many rash decisions as men feel more confident towards investing and their capabilities because the world of investing is aimed at and has been aimed at men for centuries. Now, if you couple that with the fact that men have more disposable income on average, you can see why the investing gender gap is real. And that concludes my argument. Case closed. Now, I didn't make this video to bash the dude that wrote the comment. But when it came through, it just infuriated me so much that I just felt like I needed to address it. Now, I'm a massive advocate for financial equality, but it's not until you read it and you're seeing report after report after report about how women are at a disadvantage, especially black women. And I feel very passionate in my mission as a financial coach to help empower women to feel confident with their money and to know that money is for them, and to help them grow and build wealth. Because equality isn't about women having more than men or being better than men. It's about us having equal opportunities and equal access to capital and it being a level playing field. So yeah, that is the video. Thank you for watching, and feel free to message me if you want to have a chat about it, and I hope to see you in the next video.